The Sorceress of Zanisu. Scions of the elements, the Sorceress rains down cold, lightning, and fire on the enemies of the light. With Diablo II Resurrected coming around the corner, I thought this would be a good time to showcase the skills of the Sorceress for newcomers to the series, as well as show off the upgraded look for veterans. So sit back and enjoy, as I, Tales for Game Lord Dash, bring you a closer look at the skills of the Sorceress in Diablo II Resurrected.
Not even death can save you from me.
Our first line of spells are from the Cold Spells line. Unlike pure damage spells, cold spells have additional status inflicted along with them, like the Necromancer's poison spells. These are broken down into two factors: chilled and frozen. Chilled enemies move and attack slower and have a chance to shatter when killed. Frozen enemies freeze into a petrified state and will 100% shatter upon death. Which, while annoying to necromancers and barbarians needing corpses, it's quite beneficial when dealing with Fallen and Fetish, who revive their own by destroying their bodies. Our cold spells line begin with Ice Bolt, a fairly basic beginning spell that chills rather than freezes. Lower damage and zero splash damage makes this a great beginner spell, but not great long term. Frozen Armor. This spell boosts the Sorceress's defense and freezes enemies on hit, while only chilling other players in PvP. This is one of several Frozen Armor spells, and only one can be active at a time. Frost Nova. One of the Nova spells, an expanding ring of energy emanates from the Sorceress. This one dealing damage and chilling enemies in the affected range of the spell instantly. A great crowd control spell. Ice Blast. Launch a large frost projectile that deals large amount of damage and freezes the target on hit or chilling other players in PvP. A much more preferable primary damage spell to Ice Bolt. Shiver Armor. Offering a larger bonus to defense than Frozen Armor, Shiver Armor deals damage to attackers in addition to chilling them rather than simply freezing them. Glacial Spike. Another projectile spell that freezes enemies on hit, but trades the damage scaling of Ice Blast for splash damage for handling larger groups of enemies. Blizzard. A localized area effect spell that deals cold damage over time and chills enemies on hit, and also has the highest damage potential of any spell in this line. This spell requires enemies to be herded together to be most effective, however, so without high enemy density, you'll be casting these babies all over, which, I mean, that looks cool. Chilling Armor. The final Cold Armor spell offers a lesser defensive boost than Shiver Armor, but higher than Frozen Armor. Unlike its other two variants, which simply react to melee attackers, Chilling Armor reacts to ranged attackers by firing ice bolts back in the direction of these assailants. Frozen Orb. One of the most awesome spells in this line, the Sorceress fires a large, swirling orb of frozen energy that rapid-fires smaller projectiles in a large area and ends in a swirling mass of projectiles which chills all enemies hit. This is another skill spell that requires enemies to be grouped just so to be most effective, as damage potential is highest at the heart of the spell, and has a cast delay that is best paired with an additional spell to maximize DPS. A lot of great builds revolve around this spell, so definitely give this one a look. Cold Mastery. Increases the effectiveness of the Sorceress's cold spells by decreasing the enemy's resistance to them. This does not break elemental immunity as seen in Hell mode, but can reduce resistances into the negatives, giving the Sorceress huge damage boosts for all of her cold spells. This only works for her spells and not her allies or their minions. Lightning Spells. The Lightning spell line contains some of the most recurring spells in the game. Most spells do decent amounts of pure damage, typically meant to be cast rapidly, and many utility spells make several appearances in most character builds. A great spell list to invest a lot of points into, and some you don't have to wait long to start getting the maximum return for your investment, such as Charged Bolt. Though this spell comes first in the Sorceress's lightning tree, it is bar none the highest possible damage dealer in this tree, with each bolt dealing a decent amount of damage per bolt and 22 plus bolts per cast. Depending on your angle and distance, one enemy has the possibility of absorbing most of that. For such a low mana draining spell, this thing is a beast at higher levels and can make seriously short work of most enemies, especially when considering pairing it with Warmth from the fire spells line, which will immediately replenish your mana, almost as though you didn't cast the spell at all. Telekinesis. While a fun spell on paper, telekinesis is really not very useful aside from activating waypoints, hitting shrines, opening chests, and picking up items. It's still pretty fun to use though. However, this spell does have benefits for the energy shield spell, which I will cover in a moment. Static Field. This spell deals a percentage of the enemy's current health in lightning damage, starting at 25%, functioning very similarly to Crushing Blow, and scaling with the enemy's lightning resist up to 50%. While this spell cannot single-handedly kill a target, it can make it vastly easier to kill a target with fewer casts of various other spells. Lightning. Fire a single bolt of concentrated lightning damage down a straight line, which pierces targets, affecting multiple monsters in a row, much like the Bone Spear spell of the Necromancer. Great for narrow corridors like the dreaded Maggot Lair. Nova. Similar to its frosty cousin, Nova extends in a ring from the Sorceress out for quite a distance, and is excellent for taking out multiple enemies in the area. But focusing on this spell requires a high amount of mana and close proximity to enemies, but works great when paired with high delay casting skills like Meteor. Chain Lightning. Another great crowd kill spell in this line, Chain Lightning leaps from enemy to enemy, hitting more and more targets as it levels up, as well as dealing some rather impressive damage. Teleport. A fairly self-explanatory spell, Teleport moves the Sorceress from one spot to another instantaneously, including through walls and across great chasms of space. Great for exploring maps quickly and putting the Sorceress in position for big crowd kill spells like Nova and Static Field. This is a very popular spell for use for a multitude of classes, appearing on multiple magic items, and a particularly popular rune word. It's a bit of an enigma, really. Thunderstorm. I love this spell. There's nothing like casting a singular spell and dealing damage over a period of time. Calling down a high damage bolt once per second on a random enemy without having to target and cast. It's insanely fun, while paired with Shiver Armor and Blaze, while teleporting into large groups and slamming them down with Nova. Way too much fun. Energy Shield. This spell acts to divide damage normally taken exclusively out of health, and splits it between health and mana, with higher levels moving more damage to mana and less to health, while lasting longer. This is not particularly useful to builds that are high health and low mana. Also, here lies the only true use for telekinesis, as it decreases the rate of absorption of the energy shield to mana, at many points almost negating it completely, while the rate of health loss remains the same. Lightning Master. Different from Cold Mastery, Lightning Mastery increases the base damage of spells by a flat rate rather than relying on decreasing the resistance of enemies to the element instead, even in cases where the damage increases by almost 3 times. Fire spells. Anyone who saw my video on things to know before you buy, I have this odd obsession with fire, and just like the lightning spell line, fire spells are almost entirely pure damage based with very little utility, save for a few entries. And with the upgraded fire look of Diablo II Resurrected, this line looks purely amazing in addition to being insanely powerful, as each spell synergizes with others at a higher rate than most other spells. Firebolt. A very basic fire spell, and the Sorceress's starting spell, as each new Sorceress starts with a staff of Firebolt. Warmth. This is a passive skill that increases the mana regeneration of the Sorceress, and with some spells like Charged Bolt, to a degree, it makes it seem like you're almost spending no mana at all, which is fantastic to reduce the necessity of mana and rejuvenation potions. Inferno. Create a continuous stream of flame emanating from the Sorceress in a straight line, increasing in range and damage with higher skill points. Your own personal flamethrower. Blaze. A really fun spell that leaves a trail of fire in your wake for a small duration, which damages anyone who walks through the line, or if they happen to be trampled on by the Sorceress. A rather novelty spell, it doesn't do too well against ranged attackers or enemies who tend to keep away from you, but when paired with other elemental spells such as thunderstorm and chilling armor, it really is pretty fun to use. Fireball, a spell similar to Firebolt, but larger, higher damaging, and ends in splash damage affecting multiple targets per cast. Plus, who doesn't just love running into a room and casting Fireball? Just Fireball. Just Fireball. Firewall, a supremely high damaging fire spell that ignites a wall of flame. Putting more skill points into this spell increases its damage radius, making it really easy to stack walls together and create nasty damage traps. Enchant, a melee damage support spell for the Sorceress that adds fire damage and boosts attack ratings of herself, other players, or minions. Great when paired up with necromancers specializing in summons. Meteor, summon a giant flaming meteor from literally out of nowhere. Outside? Meteor. Inside? Meteor. Yeah, you get it. While the meteor does leave a field of flame in its contact point, which does deal damage, the field tends to deal less damage than the spell Firewall, so it's important to actually try to hit the enemy with the meteor. Hydra. Summon a flaming guardian from the molten rivers that run beneath the surface of Sanctuary. These three-headed sentries spit a constant stream of firebolts, therefore not dealing splash damage for the duration, though they do not cause any damage outside of this. And when one Hydra cast ends, you cast another. Cut off one head, two more take its place. Fire Mastery. Just like the Lightning Mastery passive, Fire Mastery increases the base damage of each fire spell by a solid percentage, making it essential for sorceresses focusing purely on fire magic. I hope this was helpful, that you took something away as you start your journey into Diablo 2, or I brought you some joy seeing the upgraded visuals of the Sorceress for all the veterans of the game. But what did you think of the upgrades? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and stay tuned for the other classes in this series. And thanks for watching. I hope to see you in Diablo 2 Resurrected.